3 weeks ago, we did the first session to explain what we mean by heliogenesis and the heliogenic civilization, what we're after in these calls. And that's a lot to take in. And so we then had 2 sessions with more concrete projects. One was the initiative for the regenerative market economy, and the other one was Project Miracle. And there are others to come. So we will have Haifa, Ronnie Potel here. We will have the guys from Threefold. We're doing amazing work out of Zanzibar, but in a digital space. Nora Bateson has showed interest to join us. I have to peek into my list. There will be Tim, who's sharing about the Citizens Assembly in Australia that he's working on. There will be Jack coming in from Australia as well with Imagination and AIM. Diana and team will bring in Motherland. There will be something.
Yeah, sorry.
And Naki Vale, but I would see that as 2 sessions. There will be a session about Gita. Amit Paul will bring in the RCO, whatever that is. Gad will talk about Sembla, how to heliogenically create construction materials for houses. Anne brings in the science perspective and talking about biomineralization. Amrai will help us sense and feel what a heliogenic civilization actually looks like. We'll have some citizens' assemblies in Israel. David will bring those in. We'll have Håkon and Robert sharing with us how to do carbon negative roads. Maybe Suzanne Lee talking about biofabrication, and there's a fashion project as well, growing their materials. So all of these things are lined up. There's much more in the pipe that will come, and we will continue to having these sessions every Friday. Next week is a little bit unclear because I'll be somewhere in the air between 2 continents. So somebody will have to host that session, and whoever speaks up is going to be the host. So with all of that said, today's session is about free and open exploration into questions with the people here in the room. Thank you for making time and joining. And we're recording and potentially publishing this in service of those who couldn't make it into the session and have the same questions. Okay, with that, Marcus, you wanted to break the ice.
Can do. So I didn't have the chance to participate in 2 previous sessions, unfortunately. But I had a question that I was been thinking about since the first ever town hall meeting. And I'm curious about, I'm not sure that this is the right time and space for it, but I'm curious about the future that like if somebody could tell a story of how the future would look like if the halogenic society comes to flourish, like how does the world look like? And how does it feel to wake up on a Tuesday in a society that has succeeded with this?
Okay.
And I come from a point of storytelling. And I think that's hugely important. And a good story has a firm protagonist who is like utilizing its environment to do something. And a positive and optimistic vision and story about halogenic future would be awesome. So I thought maybe we all could like play with that idea, like how the future would look like. And I'm a visual person, so the way I'm thinking about that is just, well, like how does it feel visually? But that's just a suggestion.
Okay.
And
I love it, but Thomas, before we talk about what we have talked about a lot, let's hear how Marcus sees it, just from intuition, because now he played that one in. Give it to us. Let's hear how you heard it much shorter than we have. But how do you see it if it really comes true? How do you envision it?
So as far as I understood, the like sun power or the sun comes in quite central. And I imagine that if we can really harness the power of the sun, we could do more things locally. And I feel like a society that I would love to live in is a society that has a strong local presence, that like people work, they are more a community that has more incentives in society, like the way we choose to live, to collaborate on a local scale, as well as there is a global component of this. And I also imagine that maybe the purpose of people is different. Like they have a more a gardener's mindset to life, in the way that you're more like indirectly controlling how things turn out, and that you tend to your garden, which is the projects that you have. And maybe the society, a halogenic society, is a society that can generate enough food, enough like Maslow's basic needs, like the bottom 4 segments perhaps. And that gives people, instead of a famine mindset and like a hyper capitalistic mindset, which is about getting to the top, it's more about that school and society and like the incentive structure for humanity is actually kind of modeled a bit around Maslow and Ikigai and some things like this, maybe core in our educations, so that as a human you're actually here to like, how can I contribute, how can I find my friends, how can I find safety, purpose, and that on the local level you actually like feel useful, you feel you're part of a project. The way that the week looks is maybe completely uprooted and like fitted to serve, not be an engineer cog in some machine, but more as like a bit more old school in the local way. I think at least if you can cover like house and food, you will actually you will have more time to be something else as a human. So that's kind of like, without bringing up all the notebooks, sitting here monologuing forever, this is kind of like, I imagine just a different feel to how it would be to live in such a future. And that the power of biology, like growing our own batteries, there is such a amazing future that you can have. And I think humanity actually have the capacity to figure out what they want to do with their time. So there is no, if we can get to a certain surplus level, which wouldn't be so difficult if we had like big food, like not restaurants, but places where they make food in economies of scale that's still delicious. And there is affordable housing that you can get. I don't think people would sit and like not feel like they could do anything, but that they actually would fill their time with all kinds of stuff to do. So
Thank you.
some initial
Beautiful.
thoughts.
For those who came in while Marcus was talking, what we're doing today is we're trying to tell a little story of what a heliogenic civilization might feel like, as per Marcus's request. We're trying now to build on that. So he just gave us a little first step into this. Who would like to build on that?
I would like to build on that. Yeah, you go first.
No,
Diana,
you
No,
go
yeah,
first.
you go first.
No,
Diana, you go
no
first.
way,
Yeah,
man.
okay.
You go
I'm
first.
muting Lars. You go first.
So I had this kind of epiphany during our last call last week on Friday, where suddenly realized, fuck, everything can grow, right? It's like, I mean, I come from I work a lot with refugees in Africa, and they struggle for shelter, they struggle for food, they struggle for any kind of infrastructure. And then I thought, wow, if I can grow my house or my shelter, what a dream. if I have the right tools and inputs to grow my food, right, in a regenerative way. Amazing. And then I started to imagine this world where actually my, how do you call this, my parasympathetic system can relax. And nobody has to struggle, right, for basic income. Nobody has to struggle for housing. Nobody has to struggle for food, and always in the planetary boundaries. And then I thought, wow, this is beautiful. So that's where I am at the moment. And I always like need an anchor in reality. So, and this for me is like the refugee ecosystem and how we can serve these people and then scale it to people like myself, right? Who has many more privileges like the rest of the world. I think that's fascinating. Absolutely. Right? When we can really lower our stress levels on ourselves, but also, of course, on planet Earth. And that's where I become really excited about. And to me, it's about full sovereignty, right? Being the sovereign of my own life. That's it.
Before you go, Lars, I just want to build on that quickly with a little thing. Tapping into the power of your parasympathetic nervous system and getting into relaxation response by doing that, which, for example, is possible by nature exposure. If you expose yourself to nature for 90 minutes, that reliably happens, makes you roughly 4 times as productive. Now, which leader of anything, the company, the country, whatever, wouldn't want their people to be 4 times as productive, right? So allowing people to be more relaxed actually is good for everything. Lars.
I think it's interesting that most of our history as a race on the planet have been living the halogenic civilization, right? We have been a connection between sun and biology for most of our history. We lived in wooden houses. We grew things locally because that was the only way we knew it. And we have been corrupted for about 150 years. To me, there's a lot of way of saying it. One of it is saying what economics basically is. We found a system that if I have apples and you have
carrots,
whatever, we could put a value on it, but it's an artificial value, right? Which means that we say altogether it's worth 60, but it's an illusion. It's just something that we dream, right? And then we have made that game of not real value into a game that can be corrupted in a way that we have seen today, where power have traveled from local ordinary people into a very centralized system where very few people have resources because they play around with this illusion that we call money and manipulate with it in a way that is basically, and if you're strong enough, you can design the game we are playing, right? Which means that you can print value. And what we are doing here is essentially we are taking things back into reality. We are making it into a material economy, a material-based economy, where things basically, if this is right and can become an open source, it's an asset that everybody will possess. Which means that what you are referring to, Diana, the fear game that we are playing because we are afraid that there's not enough, could maybe be transcended, which means that we are not in this fear trap all the time. We are in a trap that how can we actually collaborate to make our local communities thrive in a way that we are all taken care of. And we are all seen as something that could contribute instead of something that could be exploited for the benefit of a very, very close circle system of beings. That would be really interesting. And the thing is that what is the gap between from 150 years ago to now is that we have all the science and technology and all we need to actually make that reality real. It's just that we need to see it. It's so simple that it's actually amazing that we haven't gone there before. And then we can analyze why we haven't done it, but it's fully possible. And it will be a new and open and decentralized economy. And the fear level will be much lower, and hopefully there will be more time in the part of our system that is truly regenerative. So we also regenerate inside in a better way. So it could feel amazing to be a father again, where you're not every day afraid that there will be a planet for your children, which is like my biggest struggle at the moment. I'm really, I don't know how I would have answered the question whether I would have children today if I go 20 years back in time. It's not because I don't love it, but I don't know whether I would take anybody in that level of insecurity. We are in the perfect storm, right? Like not only AI, climate, geopolitical crisis. There's so many waves moving by synchronicity that we have to break through, and we need something as powerful as this.
Yeah.
I'd like to take a moment and go back. Sorry, Marcus, just
no worries.
To Marcus' actual request, which was, let's have a story. And I wanna offer a beginning of such a story. What does that actually feel like? And you said Tuesday morning, right? And let's say when my little daughter, who's 2 years old and just entering her graffiti artist phase, painting all the walls, when she is my age at one point, and she wakes up on a Tuesday in the heliogenic civilization, and maybe she will hear that a new child was born in her community, right? And let's call that child, let's give her a complicated name, Abjajala. That's her name. So Abjajala is born, and the community comes together, and everybody gives some seed in some form. Something that can be grown in the bioregion that they call their home, that is fit for their bioregion. And that can be seeds for plants as we know them. So there's something to eat or some fiber that you can use to make materials that you can then wear. But there are also feedstock or sources of microorganisms, fungi, things like that. Microorganisms that help you ferment loose materials into hard materials, right? And I want to bind this to something super concrete. We're currently in a lab able to take a waste stream from the construction industry in Berlin, which is everything smaller than 5 micrometers, and bind that into roof tiles with the help of microorganisms. And if I can ferment my kombucha at home, I can also grow my roof tiles at home. So the community comes together and creates a shared box for Abjajala with all the ingredients she needs to be individually sovereign in her bioregion for the rest of her life. And as she grows up, she learns how to use that stuff. And she starts to grow things, and she knows how to use it for herself. She knows how to share it, right? Here where I am at the moment, when you're visiting someone in Costa Rica, when you're visiting someone or you have visitors, there's always an exchange of food. You're all constantly gifting people food, right? This is embedded in the culture. So we're gifting, we're storing our surplus in the bellies of our friends, of bellies of our community, in the houses of our community, right? And we're doing that. So let's say Abjajala loves, for example, baking bread. She's really, really good at baking bread. She's of course using a sun-driven oven to generate the heat for that. And because she's really good with yeast and microorganisms like that, she makes the most amazing bread. Now, because she makes much more bread than she can use, right? So she gives it away. Why should she keep it? Why should she even sell it? Because she's fulfilling her dream with that. And by other people being happy, glad about, joyful about receiving her gift, she feels fulfilled. Now, she can't buy a house with that, but she doesn't have to. Because the neighbor, he just loves creating houses. He just loves creating houses. And because we can grow those materials for free, he doesn't have any expenses. He just builds houses because it's fun. Right? And now that works in the small community. But there are some things that we might want to coordinate on a broader level. For example, being able to communicate like that, being able to be in relation with each other and sharing knowledge and things across maybe even the planet. Right? So we need much more specific things like satellites and laptops that we can also grow. Right? So we need to have that coordination layer on higher planes than just the community and just living in that embeddedness. But that's also possible, right? It's further out than growing a house. It's much further out than growing a house, but it's definitely possible. You can use aloe vera as a supercapacitor and then power your light with that. No need for a battery.
Yeah.
Right? So and that's my first attempt at a picture. Marcus, over to you.
That's really cool. And what you say there is also true. Like it is true and it's not impossible. And I feel like a lot of the stories that we're being told all the time, and also as a child in our education systems, is not about prospering as an individual or being a part of society or being a part of a community. We're learning about the world order. Like this is how history happens. This is all the static things that you need to know, instead of learning how to be dynamic and to learning how to learn, for example. And my mind always goes to the way we collaborate in society. I feel like you're not a part of a team. Like life is very one player. And I imagine that in the halogenic future, my week is I am participating in some local communities with real people that have different focuses on different things. And that you're automatically part of a team, but not a team that has a purpose of building a product or service, but a team in life, almost like a small farm was for people back in the days, or a tribe even further back, when you lived in coherence with a group of people and you adapted to who you are and your environment. And one of the things that I'm missing in society that maybe can lead to such a future is, today we always say supply meets demand, which is like entrepreneurs and founders coming up with a product and then launching it through marketing through us to the demand. But if we shifted it around and say demand meets supply, which is a true free market that is coming up with its intention and what it needs, and are able to use economies of scale and crowdfunding to make supply come to them on the basis of what they want. So I imagine that in the halogenic future, there is actually like how to succeed as a person, to grow yourself within Maslow pyramid of needs, for example, as a person and as a community. And you by default, like your school is helping you find space and find place in some of these communities where you participate. And one community can be heavily orientated towards archaeology because that's what they dig, that's what they're about. So I'm participating there, and And maybe that like from this, like from today, that we could need a platform where like we have this meeting, we're meeting and we're talking on a Friday, and it happens every Friday. It's called the town hall. And that's, I think, is like a super awesome social structure. And especially now we made the email happen. So I have my email and my alarm coming up on Fridays. So more likely I will be here. And throughout 2024, I'll probably be here quite a bit, right? And maybe like there is a template or a structure or a framework that we build as a small group on how to participate between us. Like how can we as individuals in this call, for example, or as a group over time, have something that captures the way that we want to collaborate and want to share, for example. And then a futuristic halogenic society is actually where our social platforms, our societies is like focused and pegged towards helping humans finding a community, which is this 1 to 5 people, 1 to 15, up towards like 80, 100 kind of scale groups. And they come together and they have some soft direction on top of this, helping each other out kind of with the basics. And I feel like society is lacking this now. We have like one player, few close friends, fewer and fewer. And then we have the big world where you can hear about a plane, like a bus crash in Mumbai, and like something happens with indigenous people in northern Norway, right? All on the same platform called Twitter, with a singular algorithm that tries to make everyone be a part of this big thing, but not being a part of it all, like a big reality TV show. So a summary of this is kind of the idea of the halogenic society is meant to be a part, like you're meant to be a part of a community. And that's like where the engine of this starts, is like, how do we use the tools in the project that exists in order to build this kind of societal unit? Yeah.
Who would like to build on that? Thank you, Marcus. While everybody's reflecting, I just want to say that when Amit is going to be here, he's going to talk about the RCO, which is a model of how to structure organizations and exactly these kinds of governance principles that as a way to link between the current world and the helogenic civilization. And we're going to try to do exactly what you said and adopt his models in the context of what we're doing here. Yeah. So, but who would like to build on this? Just unmute yourself and share.
I have another story though for this.
Yeah.
If nobody minds. Because my project, Chew on This, is also trying to do this by making a think tank meet the book club, where people can come and actually act on trying to be creative together and work with problem solving. And the way we're doing things in Chew on This is to try to make the activity that naturally forms these type of relations where you think about how can we collaborate. And this could be also a way, so we call it creativity as a sport. And maybe a halogenic society is also a place where, like, oh, on Thursday at 15, I'm going to meet up with my think tank because we're talking about things that has to do with, well, some topic that we're interested in as a community. And that, yeah, this like town hall principle we have here on this Friday, it's like transcends and becomes a part of society where coming and talking to each other and being creative is actually something that we treat like sports, like we do on Thursdays.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I have some thoughts on that, but I want to welcome Nancy. Nancy, we're not is presenting any specific project today. We're just in an open conversation and part imagination of what a heliogenic civilization might be. And Marcus led us in asking that specific question and bringing into here ideas for governance. So just if you feel you would like to contribute in any way, just unmute yourself and do that.
I tried to get in, and sorry, I'm coming in the middle. There was something else before that I couldn't leave earlier.
No worries. What I wanted to relate based on what you just said, Marcus, is something that I learned from Alexander Bard, who's a interesting character. I see your smile already, Marcus. But there's something very, very interesting that he apparently found, and I haven't done deep research on whether that's actually true, but the shallow research that I did confirmed it. So, and that was towards the configuration of hunter-gatherer tribes. You probably know that. You're nodding. So I'm going to try to create a short, big overview of that. So apparently the configuration of a hunter-gatherer tribe is that at the center there is there's one group that is more or less responsible for the cultural fabric. And it is usually led by one individual, or one individual holds the core of the power. And usually that large group is predominantly feminine energy, and mostly women. 45% of the population are in that modality. That doesn't mean that in all of your life, throughout all your life, in all aspects of your life, you're in that, but that's the core. Around that, there's a 5% mitigation layer between feminine and masculine energy, and androgynous population that can articulate in both types of communication patterns. 45% of the population more in the masculine energy sort themselves into subgroups around that layer, around this. So we have this core, 45%, 5%, and then another 45% of dudes doing duty things like killing, hunting, chilling, sporting, whatever they do. And then around that, there's a 5% layer of interface with other communities. The ambassadors, the shamans, the crazy ones, the ones at the fringes. Now, there are very interesting things to be said about that. One thing I learned from Joe Brewer around why don't we infiltrate existing communities that have grown their own cultural structures and substrate for hundreds, maybe thousands of years, and we help them get back into touch with these things. He's doing that in Colombia, where tourism has basically eradicated indigenous knowledge about the environment in a certain bioregion where he's active. And with his Western educated knowledge about cloud systems and ecosystems, etc., he's helping to rediscover knowledge about water systems in that bioregion and bringing that back into the community to help heal this stuff. And then there's Forrest Landry, and Forrest is a really, really deep thinker out of California. He's loosely associated with the Game B people. We've had a really, really deep conversation with him a couple of years ago, and you can check out his small group process on the Jim Rutt Show, where he lays that out as a most concrete part of the his very abstract metaphysics. But in the small group process is very, very similar to the observation that Alexander shared about the configuration of hunter-gatherer tribes, but coming from a totally different angle. What Forrest was trying to do is trying to understand the modalities of governance that we're used to and using, and putting them into a configuration that is more than the sum of its parts. And the configuration he offers is, there's a core. He calls that the consensus group. So there's a group of people getting into consensus about what should happen. And that's consensus. Consensus is slow. Consensus is frustrating. Consensus is not pleasant, right? It's not compromise. It's consensus. That's a completely different thing. And around that, there are meritocratically, hierarchically organized task forces who go out and do stuff in the world. Stuff that has been decided upon by the consensus group. And they can be in any format they like, as long as they achieve their goal in relation to what the consensus group said. But there's a probability that sometimes some of those leaders of these action groups goes haywire and goes dark triad and starts to hijack the whole thing. That's where he introduces a democracy emergency button. So he says, if somebody goes dark triad, you can just push that button and say, there's a problem over here, which then creates a vote around whether the consensus group should come together and have a conversation around that and make a decision on what to do with this. I think that's a powerful way of solving small groups. And if you add sortition to that, then you can potentially, I don't know that, but you can potentially scale that up to larger groups as well. So I think there's a very, very coherent structure around governance here that has been tried and tested for a long time. Welcome, Gugu, South Africa in the house. We just lost Sierra Leone, probably due to connectivity, so I'm glad Africa is here.
Nice to be here. Hi, Thomas. Hi, everyone.
Just to catch you up, we're just in a loose conversation around getting a more felt sense of what a heliogenic civilization might be, trying to share stories and thoughts and feedback around how that might work, how the governance might feel, how the governance might work, etc. So feel free just to unmute, give your thoughts, questions, etc.
I would
Okay.
like to
Yeah,
I would like to add something. Yeah. Two things. The first thing is I have just learned recently when it comes to storytelling. The one thing that's most important is your story believable, right? So because what we are trying here is very bold and big, and I think it's very important in order to reach more awareness and also understanding from people who are not familiar yet with this kind of idea, approach, or concept, to give them some building blocks, very practical, right? So the things you mentioned, like using aloe vera, right? Stuff like this, so that people can see, okay, it's really possible. Otherwise, I think it's too far away from their reality. So we have to create the story as believable as possible. I think this is one thing. Then the other thing is, I really believe in the power of self-organized environments. And what you have mentioned, Marcus, and also Thomas, you find this across Africa, right? It consists of so many different tribes, and they are perfectly organized. And if they have one psychopath among their community, right, they have some amazing self-regulatory systems. So it's already there. So I think we don't have to reinvent everything, right? We also have to pay attention what's already out there and what's functioning, and things we don't have to intervene with or have to change at all. And that's why I'm also so happy that Moses was here and now Google, right? So that we can also learn more from the experiences from the African continent. So these are the two things I wanted to share with you.
I'm not going to take too much airtime, just one thing here. No, seriously, because dark triads, the way hunter-gatherer tribes or generally indigenous people around the planet used to handle dark triad people is very consistent. And we've lost that. We have to recapture that in some way for us. And the consistency is that if a tribe discovered that a child exhibits dark triad behavior, they would come together and decide they are going to try to heal that child. But if they didn't succeed in that, it would be killed when it was like 14. And that's probably the best kind of way to deal with dark triad personalities that cannot be healed. Because otherwise you will, by definition of what that thing is, be captured. And that's what we're seeing in the world.
Interesting. And then, sorry, go ahead.
No, Diana, you first.
Yeah, so interesting. I mean, there's also Ubuntu, right? So if you have, like in communities where you have somebody who totally acts against any ethics or moral principles within the community, it could be any kind of criminal act or even murder. This person is put in the center of the community, and the entire community reminds this person of the good seeds they have within themselves. They do this for days, right? And it's not like a European view on what's happening in some communities, but I think it's really powerful. Instead of punishing somebody, right, really bringing in back the love and the appreciation. Of course, it doesn't work in all of the cases, but generally, I think it's a much more humane approach. That's all. Sorry for interrupting, Marcus.
No worries. It's a Friday chat, anyways. Yeah, what I wanted to just build upon there is imagine we had like we had this book called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and we can make the human's guide to a helogenic society, which is like the heliogenesis game, which becomes like this seed that is a story. You start talking about this story, it has questions, it has like maybe a protagonist, it makes the group reflect. And then they go into some sort of like educational journey where it's about, okay, you need a community. Like the first chapter is about building your tribe and how to like come to a point where a group of 10 people decides that in a certain frequency, we're going to come and help each other. And then there is a framework of like questions and exercises that this group can do in order to start employing like activities and methods and ways of helping each other and moving towards where they want to go. And that it's kind of in the same way we treat football and sports. Like imagine they set up a gym for your body, it's a gym for your group to come and like be a better group, to be a better tribe that actually comes and help each other. It doesn't have to encapsulate all of life and you kind of like get lost in that one specific group, and that's a part of the fabric of society. The default purpose in society is to be a part of such a group. And I feel like there's a lot of like innocent people who sits behind bars today because of their circumstance, and like they're being punished for who they were in a certain moment, but not for their entire character. And I think that like a group will self-regulate, you know, if there's love involved in that group. If they feel like, yeah, we're here to succeed together, like you matter to me, or your success is my success, kind of. And I think any futuristic society that has these values has to be decentralized, grown. And that's why I think like the story seed, that there is like there's a way for a group of people to read a bunch of texts and do a lot of exercises that eventually grows them to self-sustainably practice the helogenic society. And when more groups of these are made, they will like build federations in the beginning, but maybe melt into a bigger scale collaboration that still keeps the cells or the pods or the tribes of the people that are choosing to collaborate in different ways. What do you guys think about this?
Yeah, exactly. What comes up when you hear that? Anybody?
Lars, where's your sound? You were starting with this amazing sound and now you just went silent.
No, I'm listening. I
Okay.
love listening.
Oh, great.
I have a suggestion on an activity we could do in Berlin. So because I am running these creativity workshops and we have around 50 participants who come, and all over the walls we have prompts and questions like this all over the walls, with questions that is made by the people participating, things that they want to chew on. It's called chew on this, which is like an act of being creative. And then we have like three main parts that they go through. One is to find intent. So like, what do they want to chew on? Like, what questions are they curious about? What do they need in their lives right now? Or what are they passionate about speaking about? And then in the second phase, they're coming up with a prompt, which is basically making their own poster like this. And in the third phase, we're trying to solve that question, like coming up with a solution to it. And the response to this in Berlin has been astonishing. And people really love to come into a story world where they actually can talk to each other. Like the purpose is to talk to each other, and these simple non-AI paper things is actually breaking the ice for all the people. And I can imagine that we could like try to use the chew on this kind of game story to come up with a bunch of phylogenesis questions. Like, how do you, like, what kind of society is this? How can we collaborate? It could be a way to maybe over a course of talks like this, we could extract some seeds from our conversations that gets formed into prompts, which makes people be like, how can you collaborate in this way? Within biology or energy or society or different ways.
That's really funny that you just to say that, because I just took a note that I'm going to do a similar offer to the helogenic group in general, and I think they're linked. So maybe you want to even take the lead on that. I'm just going to give you a little framing around that. I think, well, a couple of years ago, I finally forced myself to do the thing that I knew I needed to do for a long time, because I was one of the people who used to say, we're building a better world, without having any clue about what that actually means, right? I was always building some assumption on targeting some symptom, and never being really sure about, am I addressing a root cause here? And so I decided, now I'm going to tackle that hard work of really thinking through what is my incarnation of a good world. And in order to do that, I needed a framework, and I couldn't find a proper framework. I tried SDGs, I tried Maslow, I tried all sorts of things, more esoteric things, but I couldn't find a real framework that helped me look at 360 degrees of what humans do. And so I started asking myself, in order to find the framework at first, started asking myself questions of what I would expect from that framework. But then those questions turned into the framework itself. And then Jim Rutt helped me deepen those questions. And I had originally 6, and we came up with 7th. And those were the back, the core of that book. Even though I might, I'm not recommending for anybody to read that book. It's probably pretty outdated by now, but it was really, really helpful. As you said, prompting. A year ago, I did a version of that book with an earlier version of ChatGPT, with 28 personas around the planet, fictitious personas around the planet that answered these 7 questions. It's a very boring book because ChatGPT was very boring at that point. Also don't recommend anybody reading that book, but it was a lot of fun. And it was informed by hundreds of times I've played that with people, hundreds of people all over the planet. Getting into, first starting with yourself, answering these questions, then getting into duos, and then into groups of 4, and then groups of 8, and distilling a story out of that, of how you would like the world to look like. And it turned out in those conversations that it always ends up in the same image. That everybody seems to want to live in a smallish group of people, so somewhere along the Dunbar scale, no more than about 4,000 people, 150 plus to 4,000, and in nature, and somehow in balance with those people and the nature. And then they put that onto a matrix between no tech and high tech, and Victorian monogamous values and Californian polyamorous values. And somewhere in there, they find themselves. It's not that they consciously do that. That's what I extract from there. So I was going to offer to play that with the group. But if you want to offer something, that's amazing. And if you want to build on those questions, totally your guest. I will pop a small PDF into our WhatsApp right now that contains these questions, so just so you can have a look and play with it. Okay, I'm really curious. Ferdinand, Alim, Nancy, Gugu, you've been all quiet. I'm really curious, whatever came up for you while you were listening, you've been listening for a while, whatever came up for you, that we could explore here. Is there anything? Just please unmute yourself and share with us.
I was wondering, since I missed the part before, I'm missing the link between what you just discussed, which is how communities are being organized or how systems are being organized, and the link to the whole heliogenesis. But I'm also, like we said, because for me, I'm not like super into the whole heliogenesis concept, only the little bit, Thomas, that you've told me about. Yeah. But for me, it's difficult to relate that right now.
Got it. Am I correctly assuming that for you, heliogenesis is the material space? Is that?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's true. So the process of heliogenesis is using natural processes driven by sunlight directly or indirectly to generate the material abundance that we need. But on top of that material abundance, and because of that material abundance, if we solve Maslow 1 and 2 through that, what we can then do is unfold a whole broad spectrum of rethinking education, governance, transactional exchange, all of those dimensions. And so what we think of as the heliogenic civilization is all of this, right? This is more than just the materials part, and we call these projects that are working to bridging towards there, we call those infrastructures of generosity, because they inherently cannot be extractively successful here in the current paradigm if they want to be heliogenic. So they have to be very generous at the moment. And so governance plays a central role in all of that. So that's why we're going to have sessions around things like citizens' assembly or deliberative democracy, sortition, all of these kinds of things in conjunction with creating materials.
I also feel like that, somebody needs to choose to live this way. So to me, it's always, I find it, my perspective into the halogenic society is, how do you make a societal story, framework, incentive mechanism, economics that makes people want to choose? It's like sexy to choose to live this way. For example, initially there needs to be groups of people who have the funding capacity as a group to actually get space and equipment to start living more like this, and for groups made out of groups to have the option, like the possibility to get like the snowball effect, that you can actually make some changes in society, shift policy, and make people aware of this possibility. And I think that, like, I'm in this meeting because all around me there is like negative things and death and all the worst that we can possibly hear about our behavior as a species. That's what is captured in the media. So I think that like the way that so how do we take this idea and all the things within the material, like the material aspect, which is where we want to get to create abundance enough to be less stressed and do things that is more natural to us, especially thinking before the society we live in today, which is a fraction of all time and all experience. Yeah, so maybe to build on what Thomas said, I don't know, maybe Nancy, what you think about that, but that's kind of where I'm coming, like how this is relevant to the material part.
No. It makes a lot of sense. I now get why you've been discussing around that. I'm thinking, or I'm wondering how it's almost like what comes first, or whether it's possible to build that in parallel, or whether you need to, whether like a common vision on this is good enough, or whether you need to create this abundance first for systems that are different from the ones that we have today to actually flourish and work, which is an interesting question, because it kind of, like, of course, very much simpler versions goes back into how like people have been trying to organize organizations differently with like self-managed structures and all of that. And like, I would argue 95% of those have failed, and it was all labeled like new work and whatever. But like in most cases, it hasn't flourished as much as Lalou was promising back then. So, why is that, and what is missing to make like a different type of organization or a different type of society work?
I think it's a multi-phase project, and it is already being in the works, right? So we're not here to build a project. Heliogenesis is not a project; it's an idea. And But there are many, many projects in the world that are already doing these things from some of those perspectives that you're describing, right? You can tackle this from an education perspective. You can tackle it from materials, from a finance perspective, from a governance perspective. So many, and they're all super hard to bootstrap, even if they are connected. But they're almost impossible to bootstrap if they're not connected. So what we're trying to offer with heliogenesis and the idea of the heliogenic civilization is a substrate where people can come together and see that others are working on the same stuff already, and how these actually might fit together and towards what they're all working together. So we're not inventing anything. We're just putting some obvious stuff together, and sharing a space so that people can come together and start coordinating. That's a coordination function.
Now you're collecting best practices of things you found and sharing those.
Yeah, exactly. And concrete projects, not theory, right? Things that are actually doing something on the ground. We're past the point where it is useful to understand how we got here, right? That's done. We can look at that. It's all done. We're also converging, and when I mean we, us all globally, onto specific patterns of what a good world might look like if we manage to bend into that and not break. And what we're trying to do here is just offer one version that is hopefully aspiring enough so that people can attach their projects to it, and then everybody starts seeing more. And Google, I see your hand. Just one image that I really love in that context, which was when the Serbs tried to get rid of Milosevic. One thing they did was to take their television set on an evening walk during the evening news. And the reason why they did that was to show everybody else that they weren't buying into the propaganda narrative of the government, right? Nobody could stop you from taking your television set on a walk. It was somehow fun and weird. It definitely drew attention, and it coordinated the people around a common understanding. That's crucially important, to see that we're not alone. Gugu, please go. Gugu?
Hi, everyone. Can you guys hear me?
Hi. Yeah, we can hear you. Do you have a camera?
Hi.
Or
I'm trying to switch it on, but it's load shedding in South Africa, so network usually is an issue.
don't worry.
But can you guys hear me? Am I clear?
Totally.
Hello?
Yes, we can
Okay,
hear you
yeah, you
perfectly.
can hear me.
Yeah.
Okay. So hi everyone. My name is Kukuletu Mahlangu. I am from South Africa, and I am a farmer. And I'm just, hearing you guys speak about, wonderful ideas. And I thought I should come in because I feel like I am currently experiencing change that needs such great ideas. So I'm based in Witbank in Mpumalanga. Mpumalanga is a province in South Africa, and what's unique about my small town is that we are the energy hub of the country. We have all sorts of power stations, and we have over 22 collieries just within the small town. And currently, as you guys know, South Africa has been part of the Paris Agreement. They signed, that they would also commit to net zero by 2050. So there's a lot of change happening, and it is targeted specifically in my region. in Witbank in the province of Mpumalanga. So now they're trying to decommission power stations. They're trying to uplift and trying to find green innovators, because they're looking to kind of change the mining impact of the province. And it is, I mean, I attend a lot of community meetings, and it's haywire. People are used to the mines as their economic stability. So people are questioning climate change. People are threatened by their livelihoods, and people don't really see a green alternative as sustainable. They think it's a fad. So I'm amidst all this craziness, and it's really interesting that you guys are speaking about such wonderful ideas of heliogenesis, presenting an idea of just transforming, the pathway towards sustainability and resilience, because I think I'm at the heart of that, especially in an economy centered on like solar energy, ecological restoration. They're looking for, green entrepreneurs to bring the community together, because currently the community is fragmented. Currently the community is up in arms. So for me, when I look at how I can bring an ideology that can turn my province into kind of like a green Wakanda and inspire the community, I look at my province intensely, because Mpumalanga actually has a potential to kind of just reshape everyone's socioeconomic landscape, like profoundly. Because obviously, if we change into more green initiatives, there's new skills, there's job creation and environmental restoration, blah, blah, blah. But we are also going to become resilient, because Mpumalanga is where the sun rises. That's exactly what Mpumalanga means, the place of the rising sun. So we are blessed with one of the best subtropical climates. All our avocados grow here. Cattle and livestock and sheep in colder regions, because we have the high veld and the low veld. We are blessed with railway tracks as well that connects the entire province. We are very close to Maputo and Mozambique. So the prosperity and the opportunities are immense, but people just cannot see that. So honestly, when it comes to heliogenesis, education and innovation are the key drivers to this transformation. I even changed my business model to actually incorporate education, because I'm like, people need to know what sustainability means and how it can look like and how it can actually benefit their lives, instead of clinging on to old ideas and clinging on to the mining sector. Honestly, the mining sector has done so much damage in my environment, in the region, and globally, I think, because climate change is not really localized. But I grew up with asthma. I know all of my friends with, we had asthma pups growing up. Our teeth were discolored because of the fluoride. The water is contaminated. There's cadmium, there's lead in it. There's obviously natural sinks, and there's mining sinks, because they keep digging and digging. And that's now created an overflow of just deep ponds that are just contaminated, that are seeping through agricultural lands. The air is tough to breathe. So it's a lot. Then I'm just looking at it like, what is the solution? How do we remediate this? How do we change the mentality of the community? So it's just interesting. And I think, in conclusion, I think really creating like a heliogenesis in Mpumalanga is quite ambitious when I'm just hearing all these wonderful ideas. But I do believe it's achievable. It just requires like a vision with collective effort and commitment. You can tell people about solar energy, but I think the best thing to do would be to educate them. You can, speak all this new sustainability jargon, climate change, solar energy, solar power, and all these things that people actually don't know how it's gonna look like. It's for them, you're just throwing words around. So interesting. Yeah, I think I'm talking a lot, but I just wanted to bring this forward because that's my perspective, and I think it really ties into what we're talking about here. So yeah.
Thank you, Ugo. That's super important, and for everybody, I put a conversation Google and I had on a podcast into the chat if you'd like to dive in deeper. Before you came in, Marcus pointed us towards talking about exactly that. How can we make this formulate this all in a way that it's actually touches in us in our feeling and not in our mind, and not through thoughts, but more in feelings through story. And that's what we've been trying to do. So maybe Marcus, you wanna pick up on that? Maybe you have a appropriate response to Google's concerns.
Yeah, at least what comes to mind is that, at least to me, I also, a lot of big stories out there that are new, they are a lot about like our, like very existential, while the helogenesis point of view is more about the regenerative narrative, about like utilizing what's already here, collaborating in a different way. And besides having a great story, so one of the things I suggested was that we start a conversation about like describing this future, how it is to live in such a future, so that it's easy for somebody who goes through this story to empathize with the character and think about themselves in such a world. And I am really appreciative of this, I like the idea of the halogenic society, because it's an interesting narrative in the same way Star Wars is a narrative. We could try to build our own world, like work with world building, which is imagining the future and what it contains. And then in the same time, the other side of the coin of that is making it actionable. So how do we exercise living that story? And in the beginning, in a very small way, and over time, it could pick up speed. And I also would like to stress that I think a lot of these ideas that we talk about is very new in terms of where we've been the past 150 years and the time before. And that this story is important for us to talk about. And also what you said, Nancy, that at some point we need to formalize, or like to put into words, some kind of story. And a lot of things that humanity has done past the years has been multi-generations. And I think this is like, it is important to do something now, even though it's just storytelling, because a big, like the Roman Empire was probably a story created around a few people in the beginning. And then it culturally just grew as an idea, thus because, and I think that's not that the helogenic society should become kind of like Roman Empire, but that stories can grow, and especially if it's inspiring, that I would love to live in this society. How can I learn more about like getting some of that? So that's my response, Guguletu. And it's really cool to hear about your story and how you live in a community that could have a lot of value from dreaming about the future as like a way to come together and to collaborate more through intuition, because we both all want to kind of get in a similar way. And our society now, like a lot of the established structures, doesn't help us do that, and that's why forums like this is really important. And I can also throw in the end here that throughout my travels, I've been like talking about trying to get to know the Homo sapiens in all of the different flavors, and all the humans and the people I meet are actually quite in their more pedestrian ways of looking at the world, and not in the big geopolitical ones. But when you talk to a regular person in Shenzhen, China, you will find that they're exactly the same as talking to a person in San Francisco. On the very base level, they do want the same kind of things as a being. And And that's why I think the helogenic society could work, because we just have to tell the story and build the ways to collaborate that eventually outcompetes the current fad, the current fashion of the way we have our societies. So
maybe in that context, just one thought. Maybe we don't outcompete, we just outlove.
Yeah,
because we're not even playing the same game.
agree.
Yeah, I also feel very touched, Gugu, what you have shared. And I also feel a strong sense of urgency since there are really trillions of dollars are invested in the so-called green economy. And I think that's not the right approach, right? Which will help us to tackle all the grand challenges we are facing at the moment. So, and if I think of all this, really, this major amount of money, again, flowing into the wrong system, which has not been fully thought through, makes me actually angry, right? I don't feel love right now. I think of fuck, right? So I also think there's some kind of urgency. Yes, we want to create this society and a new world for all of us. And I think it really starts with the dream and with the vision and with having the right state, right, in order to birth it into the world. And at the same time, because of all the things we are facing, no matter where you look, there's urgency. And I don't know if this kind of urgency itself as a characteristic has a place or space in the world we are trying to build, right? I'm not sure, because there's one aspect of dreaming, but the other part inside of me really calls for straightforward action. I don't know if this resonates. I think it resonates with all of us, right? We are all have bought into the narratives we are surrounded by, whether climate change, climate threat, exploitation, and so on and so forth. But when I heard Gugu's story, I felt like really standing up, right, and talk to the people and building a strong ecosystem, which really is like a counterpart, especially to what's happening in Africa at the moment. Because of the post-colonial exploitative structures, right, replicating themselves, duplicating over and over again. So I wonder how we could also, especially now Guru's case, right, go into this or collaborate with these communities. How can we make this happen? Is it via creating more awareness, having like a format where we enable concrete dialogues on different hierarchical level? I don't know. I just want to share this with you. I feel urgency a lot.
I would say in any way we can. So and then there are many ways to do this. I mean, just to point at one really concrete one, which is roads are an issue in most southern hemisphere. There are ways to do roads in carbon negative, heliogenic ways. Right? So if you have if you know of somebody in the southern hemisphere who is in charge of making a road, here's a solution, right? Bind X and Carbon Crusher, both of them have different heliogenic solutions to building modern roads, non-fossil fuel based roads. So this is a concrete example that can start uplifting. And this is just one out of many. It's a coordination function, because what you said is ultimately that there are few centers of power. North Atlantic is some part of the Arab space, maybe as parts of Asia, etc. But ultimately, the majority of the people are not in power, and they're not just simply not in power because they are not coordinated. And the structures that give those few, the minority that most of us in this space here now are part of, actually all of us except for Google, will run out of its power very soon for simple biophysical constraints on this planet. And this will force all of civilization into a bend or break moment. And anybody with financial assets right now should listen up, because if you still have financial assets in the way we're using finance today, after that bend or break moment, you've done something wrong, because that stuff will be worth zero afterwards. In a break scenario, things will go absolutely haywire. We'll have millions and billions of people moving location, and there's no amount of firepower or walls that you can build to prevent that from happening, from people coming to you. Yeah. Right? And in that scenario, money is the least of your concerns. And the institutions that protect the value of your money will fall away. And the global infrastructure that has created the backing of the financial value that you so cherish will fall away, and thereby take the value of your money with it. So there's an entire new set of asset classes that are in the bend moment, right? Asset classes that I have absolutely no role in the current situation. And this is where money, if you want to use money wisely towards maintaining some level of power and definitely converting it into useful asset classes, that's where your asset classes need to go. That's where your money needs to go. Getting asset classes that are compatible with a bend moment, compatible with the heliogenic civilization. And also there, because this is foundationally, this is going to lead into a relational economy, into an economy that's closer to a gifting economy than to a transactional economy. Your financial assets will be worth nil at that point as well. So if you still have money in 20 years, you've done something wrong. Let's put it that way, to bluntly say it. And just one last thing about the relational economy rather than the transactional economy. If you look at a very, very important measure in the transactional economy, which is the velocity of money, and you code that as a form of bit rate, right? How many bits can you move through the system any second? And you compare that with the bit rate of a relational economy, it looks like the relational economy is twice as fast as the transactional model. That's super powerful, right? John Nancy, thank you for coming. So yeah, with that little rant around that, there are some few that understand this, and what we're working towards with some of our efforts is establishing the idea of exit to planet, meaning that enormous amounts of sovereign wealth could buy out solutions that are currently trapped in the competitive extractive game of the market economy and put them into the commons for the good of all. Exit to planet as a way of using the economic competitive machine that we have to ensure positive behavior.
It was a good rant, Thomas.
Absolutely. Just
What is he talking about? Okay. Has to really digest. Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
Gugu, you unmuted
Yeah.
yourself. Would you like to share something?
No, I'm just I'm looking forward to just the knowledge sharing here in this group and the inspiration because I'm sure we have different perspectives to what's going on globally, and how we can just work together and foster change because ideas are powerful. I do believe that. And in as much as the just transition has its own political play and people are coming in to just jump on the green bandwagon without really factoring a lot of things, I do believe in sustainability. I do believe in a society that depends on each other and goes back to nature. That is what I believe as a farmer in any case. So if we can go back to supporting local businesses, if we can go back to creating agro parks. We used to do that in Ridbank, but I mean, the mine comes, buys land, and all the land that you see is vacant, and it's vast, but it belongs to someone. So you can't really be innovative in Mpumalanga. But I would like to continue these meetings. I think they're very important. I'm realizing now that they're very important. And also, yeah, for me, education is key. Exposure is key. I mean, they're trying their level best now to get the community that is around a power station. One of the biggest power stations has just been closed down. So they're trying to, actually, it's been decommissioned. So they're trying to get the community to learn about solar, to learn about battery storage, to learn about renewable energy. But the community, I think, is just confused because some of them are boycotting it. I won't bore you guys with the politics of South Africa, but I just think that education is power, and once people know how important it is to upskill themselves, how important it is to create a community that is self-sustainable, then it's easier for them to get proactive. So I think more focusing on education, training, and exposure, more especially of the idea of heliogenesis in South Africa would definitely be beneficial. So yeah, thank you. Thanks, Thomas and Diana. Thank you, guys. Yeah,
Beautiful.
looking forward to more conversations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a thought on that, actually.
Mhm.
What
Go
if,
ahead.
as a small exercise for all of us, is to try to come up with 10 questions that start somewhere? Like, how do you make somebody want to learn how to learn about this? So learning how to learn is like your approach into the entire world that is the halogenic society, and you want to find your aspect. So what if then there is 10 questions that make you reflect about the future, and they are like rooted in halogenic values. So there's a direction to the question, but it makes somebody create a halogenic society in their mind. Is actually not the story told. It's a story generated by questions that, like, the halogenic society consists of 100 questions in 50 years from now. And if you go through these 100 questions, you will see the halogenic society.
I love it.
Yeah, I love it as
Marcus,
well.
Marcus, would you like to be the steward of that within our little group of
yeah, sure. And then we can
enthusiasts
test it
around
in
heliogenesis?
Berlin. I can fire up the 10 questions with my creativity group, and we can test it, see what happens. Yeah, I would love to.
Yes, and we can take that online. I'm happy to send messages to everybody. We have around I don't know, 250 people on an email list right now, the people in the WhatsApp, and then I'm pretty sure we can reach some people on LinkedIn as well. So we can start spreading that a little bit, and you can start exploring those ideas. I'd love for you to do that.
Yeah, I also believe that there are different clusters, right? So I mean, there's definitely the educational aspect, the awareness aspect, then we have the materials, we have the different building blocks. So I think would be great, and I'm also happy to learn from you, Marcus. And also the governance aspect, right? And economics, that we can also design questions around these different clusters so that we can create with the entire community this kind of big picture.
Maybe because I sense that this is now becoming operational. Maybe we come to an end here for today in this conversation. But if Marcus accepts, and I heard you did, to be the steward of the questions around the heliogenic civilization, then I'm sure we will hear from Marcus and get to be involved in working on this in some capacity. So that's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, it'd be cool. So much. Community project. Cool.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for pitching up and spending time here. That's really special. And Gugu, I love that you're here, that you are bringing in a super important perspective that we're missing so dearly in most of these conversations. So please, if there's anybody in around your community or whoever you want to bring them in, so we have more of that conversation.
I actually do have, before you close, I do have a comment here. So it's a bit funny that you close it when you feel that it's becoming operational, because that's actually what I'm missing. Like, what exactly can I do, or can I do anything? Also, I mean, I think I mentioned that when we had these calls in Iran, and like beginning that this, what I always when I'm doing startup, helping startups to succeed, for those that don't know me, or to get started actually. And one of the first things that I do is they have to have a big vision, which is the case. Heliogenesis is really big vision, really beautiful, and many good things in it. The next thing is they have to have a way to start, and they have to have these first steps to go in to get started. And that's I see some initial stars, and that's basically becoming operational. Like, how do we get started?
Yeah, how do we? Maybe me and you, Ferdinand, can sit and discuss that for a minute. I would love to hear your thoughts.
I think that's a great idea. You're also in the same city, so that makes it very easy for you. And I just want to be very clear. This is not a startup. This is not an organization. This will never be an organization. There will never be any money involved in heliogenesis.
Thomas, right? I know, but you have the same.
Just want to be very, very clear for also the people who might be listening, right? Just to be very, very clear.
Of course, I know very much. Of course, it's not a startup or anything like that. It still has the same topic, that it has to start somewhere, and it has to be people in the beginning, and many people who are actually interested to support it and work on it. So that part, I'm not comparing directly with the startup, but that part is you also have to have a starting point, and you don't have to have only the vision.
Completely, and that's why I find it so beautiful that Marcus stepped up today. This is the purpose of these calls, in a way, to show that there is something, and then to see who feels a calling to step up and take on stewardship of something. And that's beautiful. This was, to me, an enormous success because of that, right? And if you guys come together now, it's even a bigger success. So beautiful. Thank you.
So yeah, let's do that. Let's connect and yeah, see what we can do. What I can do on my other non-paying things on top of that to support this going forward. One comment to, I don't know whether to Google, I don't know whether she knows, probably does, or even not. I don't know how much they are, what they are doing at this point. So she mentioned a lot about these solar projects. So who's always flying past my LinkedIn is obviously this this guy is doing this Africa Green Tech, which sounds very, very much related to what you're talking about. I don't know whether you know them and whether they do things differently from the organizations that you talked about, which were not very respected, obviously, which kind of put on top of the local society. But if you don't know them, it might make sense to reach out and check out whether they fit better to the local communities, because that's the feeling when I read about them here in my small Berlin window.
I think it's definitely worth having a conversation between Thorsten and Google. Africa Green Tech focuses more on for areas of more deep crisis than South Africa. But it's definitely worth having a conversation. Absolutely.
They understand. I mean, they are very local. It feels that they are very local. That they understand what locals need. So maybe it helps.
Africa is really big, really, really big.
No, of course,
Of
course, no.
But good point.
Why don't you suggest that to Google on the WhatsApp chat? So that she's not here anymore, and I'm not sure she's going to listen to the end of this conversation.
I didn't. Okay.
I also have to leave now.
Yeah, have a wonderful weekend, and then we'll continue.
Thank you all for spending this evening with us and together. And Alim, get well. Thank you for being here anyway. And all of you, see you soon. Thank you.
See you soon.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.